Ethan was not like most boys in his village. The town was small, tucked at the edge of a vast forest where humans rarely went, and strange rumors about the forest spread from one generation to another. Some said that creatures lived there that no human had ever seen. Some said the trees whispered at night, and others claimed that the stars sometimes fell closer to Earth there than anywhere else. Ethan had never believed much in stories, but he did love exploring, especially because it gave him a break from being alone. He lived with his father, a quiet man who worked long hours repairing cargo ships. His mother had been gone for years, and the memory of her was something he held on to in pictures and faint recollections of her voice. Because of this, Ethan spent most of his days wandering the empty streets or running along the forest paths. The villagers thought he was strange, a boy who always seemed lost in thought, who laughed at his own jokes and sometimes muttered to himself while wandering. But Ethan didn't mind. He had learned to enjoy his own company and the small wonders of the world around him. One bright afternoon, the sun was just starting to dip behind the forest line, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. Ethan had grabbed a small backpack, filled with a few biscuits, a water bottle, and his favorite chocolate bar, and set off toward the edge of the forest. He wanted to explore a part he had never been to before, a narrow path he had noticed but had been too cautious to step into. As he walked, he kicked small pebbles along the path and listened to the distant rustling of leaves. It was then that he noticed something unusual. Behind an old broken fence that ran along the forest's edge, he saw movement. A small figure crouched, barely visible behind the fence posts. At first, he thought it was just a stray animal or perhaps a child playing hide-and-seek. But the figure didn't move like a human. Its shape was smaller and slightly different, and for a moment, Ethan froze. His heart beat faster, a strange mixture of fear and curiosity rushing through him. The figure slowly emerged, revealing itself to be a small child, but not like any human child Ethan had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly blue, catching the last rays of the sun, and her eyes were wide and bright, reflecting both fear and wonder. She seemed fragile, trembling as if the world itself was too heavy for her to carry. Her small hands clutched what looked like an empty food packet. She looked hungry, lost, and exhausted, and something about her made Ethan's heart ache. Most children, or even adults, might have run away in fear, but Ethan didn't. He felt an instant connection, a strange pull that made him step closer, though he kept his movements slow and gentle. He knelt down a few feet away and carefully opened his backpack. He reached in and pulled out his chocolate bar. "Here," he said softly, offering it to her. It's okay. You can have it." The alien child hesitated. She stared at the chocolate as if she had never seen anything like it before. Her hands twitched, and for a moment it seemed she might turn away. Ethan stayed still, not moving, letting her decide. Then slowly she reached out. Her fingers were delicate, glowing slightly in the dim light. She took the chocolate, her small lips curling into a tentative smile. The first smile Ethan had ever seen from her. It was shy, hesitant, but filled with relief and gratitude. Ethan smiled back. He didn't know why, but at that moment he felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling that he had done something important, something more than just offering food. He had offered comfort, safety, and friendship. The two sat in silence for a while, just watching the sun dip lower, letting the moment stretch as it might. The alien child, whom Ethan soon learned was named Lyra, didn't speak his language, and Ethan didn't understand hers. But they didn't need words. Through glances, gestures, and the small, shared smile over a chocolate bar, a bridge formed between them. A bridge that neither of them had expected, yet both of them needed. After finishing the chocolate, Lyra looked around nervously as if afraid someone might come and take her away. Ethan reached out a hand not to grab her but to offer reassurance. She hesitated for a moment before taking it lightly, allowing him to guide her a few steps further from the fence. Together they found a small hollow near the base of a tree where Lyra could sit. Hidden from view but still comfortable, Ethan realized that despite the strange and unfamiliar situation, he didn't feel scared anymore. Instead, he felt protective. He wanted to make sure she was safe, at least for now. He shared some of his water with her, showing her how to drink carefully. She mimicked him, and it made him laugh quietly. For the first time that day, Ethan didn't feel alone. As the shadows grew longer, Ethan knew he had to head back home, but leaving Lyra was hard. He promised he would return the next day, bringing more food and small gifts. He didn't know if he could ever see her again after that, but he hoped he would. And more than hope, he felt a sense of responsibility he had never felt before. For someone not even human, yet somehow in that strange way, belonging to his world for a brief moment. That night, lying in his bed, Ethan thought about the blue-skinned child hiding in the forest. He thought about how different she was and yet how much they had in common. Both were lonely. Both were looking for comfort in a world that didn't always understand them. He wondered about her life before she came to Earth, what her home had been like, and why she had ended up here trembling and scared, in the middle of nowhere. Unseen by Ethan, far above the forest and beyond human eyes, tiny pulses of energy emitted from Lyra. Every time she smiled, touched the chocolate, or held Ethan's hand, faint signals traveled outward into space. These signals were not visible to the human eye, not audible to the human ear, but they were very real. They were reaching someone, or something. Ethan didn't know it yet, but his small act of kindness had already begun something much bigger than he could imagine. And though he was just a boy with a chocolate bar and a gentle heart, in the vastness of the universe, that small gesture was the beginning of a chain of events that would change everything. For now he didn't know it. All he knew was that he had made a friend. Someone who had trusted him, someone who had smiled at him when no one else had. And that was enough to make Ethan feel like maybe, just maybe, the universe was not such a lonely place after all. Every day after school, Ethan ran straight to the forest edge, hoping to see Lyra again. At first he worried that she might not come back, that maybe she had vanished or someone had found her. But each day she appeared, cautiously stepping out from behind the trees, her small glowing eyes searching until they met his. Slowly, their secret friendship grew. Ethan learned that she understood kindness, gestures and expressions more than words, and she seemed to understand him in a way that no human ever had. Lyra could not speak in Ethan's language, and he could not speak hers, but neither of them cared. They found ways to communicate using gestures, drawing in the dirt, and laughing together. She showed him strange symbols like patterns made of stars and lines that glowed faintly when she touched them. Ethan would watch in awe, fascinated by the beauty and mystery of it. Sometimes he traced the symbols with his fingers, trying to understand what they meant. Lyra would nod or shake her head, smiling when he got it right and giggling when he guessed wrong. It became their little game, a bridge between worlds. Ethan began bringing small gifts each day. Sometimes it was fruit, biscuits, or scraps of chocolate. Other times it was small toys he had found in the attic or old trinkets his father no longer used. Lyra accepted everything carefully, touching each item as if it held magic. She never demanded anything. She only looked at Ethan with wide eyes full of wonder. In return, she gave him something more precious than any object. She shared stories of her homeworld, stories she drew in the dirt or traced in the air with her fingers. They were stories of forests taller than mountains, rivers of glowing liquid, cities that floated above the clouds, and creatures that lived in harmony with the stars. Ethan listened with rapt attention, imagining these worlds with every wordless gesture, wishing he could see them with his own eyes. At night, Ethan would lie on the grass near his home and look up at the stars. He began to wonder if Lyra's family was still out there somewhere looking for her. He wondered if her home had been destroyed by war, as she had shown him in her drawings, jagged shapes that seemed like smoke rising from buildings, dark symbols etched across the land, and tiny glowing figures running in fear. His heart ached for her, imagining how frightened she must have been when she first arrived on Earth. And he silently promised himself that he would protect her as long as he could. Unbeknownst to Ethan, Lyra's presence was sending out more than just signals of friendship. Every time she touched the small gifts he gave her, tiny pulses of energy escaped her fingers, invisible to human eyes. The energy formed a subtle beacon, faint and quiet at first, but slowly growing stronger with every act of kindness. It was not something Ethan could understand, but it was happening nonetheless. Somewhere far away in the vastness of space, her people were noticing these pulses. They were tracking them, trying to find the source. What Ethan thought of as simple friendship was, in truth, awakening attention from beings far more powerful than he could ever imagine. Days passed, and the bond between the boy and the alien child grew stronger. They shared laughter, sometimes chasing each other through the tall grass or playing make-believe games where Ethan pretended to be a hero, saving a city while Lyra drew her glowing symbols as magic spells. On cooler days, Ethan would wrap Lyra in a small blanket he had brought, keeping her warm. She would lean against him, a quiet trust forming that felt older than time itself. It was a friendship beyond words, beyond species, and Ethan felt it deeply in his chest. He had never known a connection like this before, and he treasured it more than anything. One afternoon, Ethan decided to take Lyra further into the forest, to a small clearing he had discovered days before. The place was hidden, surrounded by tall trees whose branches interlocked like a natural fortress. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the ground. Lyra's eyes widened in amazement, and she ran ahead, giggling in a way that made Ethan smile uncontrollably. She stopped at the center of the clearing and traced a series of glowing symbols in the dirt. Ethan crouched beside her, trying to mimic her patterns with twigs and pebbles, and she watched him with curiosity, then clapped her small hands together when he got close enough. They spent hours in that clearing, talking without words, sharing food, and simply enjoying each other's company. Ethan taught her small human games like how to throw a pebble into a stream, or how to climb the low branches of a tree. In return, Lyra showed him how to make the symbols glow faintly with just her touch, and sometimes the shapes would float above the ground for a few seconds before fading away. It was like magic, and Ethan's imagination soared. He began thinking of the forest as a world of its own, alive and protective of their secret friendship. But Ethan also noticed something strange. Sometimes at night, when he lay in bed and thought of Lyra, he could feel a faint vibration in the air, almost like the forest was humming quietly. He didn't know it at the time, but this was the same energy that Lyra emitted, a signal traveling far across the stars. He had no way of knowing that her people were watching, that every small act of kindness, every piece of food he gave her, every gentle smile, had activated a chain of events that could bring beings from beyond the universe straight to his doorstep. Despite the strange and mysterious signs, Ethan felt only joy when he was with Lyra. She had become his world, and he felt responsible for her in ways that went beyond words. He noticed that she rarely left the clearing, rarely wandered beyond his watchful eyes, and when danger approached, like the occasional patrols that occasionally ventured too close to the forest, she would shrink back and hide behind him. He realized that even though she was small and fragile, she trusted him completely. That trust made him braver, more careful, and more attentive than he had ever been before. Over time, Ethan began talking to her about his own life as best he could. He showed her pictures of his mother, and though Lyra could not understand who she was, she seemed to sense the sadness behind them and comforted him in her own way, leaning against him or tracing gentle patterns in the air that glowed faintly. He told her about his father's work, about his dreams of exploring the stars, and about how lonely he often felt in the town where no one seemed to understand him. In return, Lyra shared her memories of her home, though incomplete, and of the people she had lost. Together they created a shared world of understanding, bridging the gap between human and alien, loneliness and connection. The days turned into weeks, and their bond became unbreakable. Ethan had never imagined that he would find a friend like Lyra, one who could make him feel whole in a way no human friend ever had. And Lyra too seemed to find comfort in Ethan's presence, a safety she hadn't known since leaving her own world. The forest became their secret haven, a place where nothing could touch them, and yet something beyond the stars was already noticing. The pulses of energy that escaped her fingertips were growing stronger, calling out to distant watchers, beings who had not seen Lyra for a long time. Ethan still did not understand the full significance of their connection, nor did he know that a single chocolate bar, a shared smile, and a moment of trust could ripple across galaxies. All he knew was that he felt needed, important, and happy for the first time in his life. And Lyra, with her glowing eyes and gentle gestures, had found someone she could trust, someone who would protect her no matter what. Together they were more than friends. They were a bond that neither species had seen before, and unknowingly, they were setting in motion events that would change everything around them. The morning began like any other. Ethan woke early, grabbed his backpack, and ran toward the forest, eager to see Lyra. She was waiting at the clearing as usual, her small hands tracing the glowing symbols in the dirt. But today something felt different. The air was heavy, and the usual calm of the forest seemed tense, almost as if it knew something was coming. Ethan shrugged it off, thinking it was just his imagination. Lyra, however, sensed it too. She stopped drawing and looked toward the horizon, her eyes wide, reflecting a mix of fear and alertness. As Ethan approached, he noticed a strange humming sound, low and vibrating, almost like distant thunder but more precise. The birds had gone silent and even the wind seemed still. Ethan knelt beside Lyra, holding out a small piece of chocolate as he always did, but she didn't move to take it. Instead, she pointed toward the edge of the forest, and her small voice made a sound that was unfamiliar to him, a mixture of urgency and warning. Ethan's heart started pounding. He had no idea what it meant, but instinctively he felt they were not alone. Moments later, distant flashes appeared in the sky. Not lightning, but strange, glowing lights moving rapidly and silently. Ethan froze. His mind raced. He had seen plenty of things in the forest before, but never anything like this. Lyra's hand tightened around his, pulling him closer. Suddenly the ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet, and a sharp hum filled the air, growing louder with every passing second. Ethan's stomach twisted with fear and awe. The lights were approaching fast, and whatever it was huge. Then they saw them. Dozens of enormous ships descending from the sky, their metallic surfaces glinting in the sunlight. Ethan gasped. He had never imagined anything like this. The ships were enormous, shaped like nothing human made, with smooth curves and glowing lines running along their hulls. The trees of the forest swayed under the sudden gust of wind created by the ship's arrival. Ethan instinctively stepped in front of Lyra, shielding her as he realized the world they knew was about to change forever. The villagers had started noticing the strange lights and vibrations as well. Some came out of their homes pointing and screaming, while others grabbed weapons and prepared to defend themselves. Panic spread quickly. People were yelling, running, and calling for help. But in the forest, Ethan remained focused on Lyra, who was trembling and looking up at the sky with wide eyes. She pointed to the largest ship, the one at the center, its lights glowing brighter than the rest. Then she did something Ethan could not understand at first. She made a small, pulsing gesture with her hands. The glow of the ship intensified, and it slowly began descending directly toward them. When the ship landed, the ground shook violently, and dust and leaves swirled in the air. A large ramp extended from the ship, and a group of figures stepped out. Ethan froze. They were enormous, taller than any human he had ever seen, with powerful builds and armor that shimmered like the surface of water under sunlight. Their eyes glowed faintly, resembling Lyra's own eyes, and every movement they made was precise, deliberate, and commanding. Ethan wanted to run, but he couldn't. His instincts told him that these beings were not here to harm Lyra, at least not yet. At the front of the group was a figure who clearly held authority. His armor was more intricate, and his posture radiated power. He scanned the forest with eyes that seemed to pierce everything. When his gaze landed on Lyra, he stopped. Slowly he knelt, bringing himself to her level, and something about the way he looked at her made Ethan feel a strange calm amidst the chaos. Lyra stepped forward cautiously, reaching out toward him. The commander extended a hand, and a small glow pulsed from it. Connecting with Lyra, Ethan watched in amazement as the small pulse of energy seemed to communicate emotions, memories, and warnings, all without a single word. Ethan realized that the gift he had given her, the chocolate, the simple act of kindness, had triggered this arrival. Somehow it had activated a signal, a beacon that brought her people to her side. His heart swelled with pride and fear at the same time. He had only wanted to help a lonely child, and now hundreds of beings had arrived because of him. The soldiers surrounding the commander began moving in formation, scanning the forest, but there was no aggression. They were there to protect, not to attack. Ethan could feel the tension in the air as humans and aliens stared at each other, unsure who would make the first move. The villagers, terrified, started shouting and pointing weapons at the newcomers. Ethan's father appeared at the edge of the forest, his eyes wide with disbelief. What are they?" he shouted. Ethan tried to explain, but words failed him. He could only hold Lyra's hand tightly and hope she would understand that he would protect her. Meanwhile, the alien soldiers slowly spread out, forming a semicircle around Ethan, Lyra, and the clearing. Their presence was overwhelming. Each soldier's armor reflected the sunlight, creating a dazzling effect, and every movement was coordinated, almost like a dance. It was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Ethan watched as the commander signaled the soldiers to lower their weapons. The soldiers complied instantly, their hands falling to their sides. showing that they did not intend to harm the humans unless provoked. Ethan exhaled, realizing that Lyra was safe, for now. Lyra stepped closer to him and he felt her small hand squeeze his. She looked up at the commander, then at him, and Ethan understood without words. She was home now, surrounded by those who had been searching for her all this time. Despite the relief, fear remained. The humans were panicked, unsure whether to attack or flee. Ethan's father grabbed him, shaking his head. "Get back, Ethan. This isn't safe." But Ethan couldn't leave Lyra. He stayed close, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He realized that a single action, giving her a chocolate bar, had changed everything. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew that he couldn't abandon her now. The largest ship at the center, the one that had brought the commander, began to hum softly. Small lights blinked along its surface, and Ethan noticed that it seemed almost alive, responding to Lyra's presence. The other soldiers stood perfectly still, waiting for instructions, and Ethan felt a strange calm amidst the chaos. He understood for the first time that these beings were not just warriors, they were guardians, and somehow he had become part of their story. As the day went on, more ships began to descend, moving silently and precisely. In total, Ethan would later learn that 500 warriors had arrived. They filled the clearing, surrounding the forest, their presence overwhelming but protective. Every human weapon that had been raised was met with calm, non-aggressive posturing from the aliens. Ethan realized the truth. The soldiers were here for Lyra, not to fight humans, not to conquer, not to destroy. They had come because the child he had protected had sent a signal, a silent call that no one but her people could respond to. Standing there, in the middle of the forest with Lyra beside him and hundreds of alien warriors around them, Ethan felt a mixture of awe, fear, and pride. He had only wanted to help a child in need, and now he was at the center of something far larger than he could imagine. His small act of kindness had brought them here, had reunited a child with her people, and unknowingly, had changed the course of events in ways he could not yet understand. The sky above was filled with hovering ships, the forest hummed with energy, and for the first time Ethan realized that the universe was far bigger, stranger, and more wonderful than he had ever dreamed. Ethan stood frozen in the clearing, his heart pounding. All around him, humans were shouting, pointing guns, and scrambling for cover. Their fear was tangible, almost as thick as the dust kicked up by the hovering alien ships. Ethan could see the confusion in their eyes. Weapons raised against beings they didn't understand, against creatures that seemed impossibly large and powerful. He looked at Lyra, who stayed close to him, her small hand gripping his tightly, and he knew he had to act. The commander of the aliens stepped forward. His presence alone commanded silence. Every human soldier, every villager instinctively paused, unsure what he would do next. Ethan noticed the way the commander's eyes softened as they landed on Lyra. The glowing child took a hesitant step toward the leader, and the commander lowered himself to her level. Then, using a device that projected symbols and faint sounds into a language Ethan could not understand, the commander spoke. The words were calm, authoritative, and full of emotion. Ethan realized slowly that the alien leader was explaining something vital, something that even the humans could not yet grasp. Lyra was not just any child. She was their heir, the last surviving member of her royal line. Her people had been searching across galaxies for her, and the simple act of kindness that Ethan had shown, giving her a piece of chocolate, holding her hand, protecting her, had activated a signal that called them to her side. Ethan's chest tightened as he understood the truth. The boy who had wandered alone in the forest had, without knowing it, saved an entire lineage from disappearing forever. The humans were still tense, guns raised, and voices raised in fear and panic. Ethan saw the anger and suspicion on some faces, but he also noticed hesitation. The commander did not threaten. He only pointed to Lyra and gestured in a way that conveyed protection, not violence. He made it clear. Anyone who attacked her would face consequences, but his people were not here to fight humans. They had come for the child alone. Ethan could feel the tension around him slowly shifting, even if only slightly. Ethan stepped forward. His voice trembled, but he spoke anyway.
Please, and don't fight.
She's just a child. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. I promise she won't. His words were small, but the sincerity in them carried weight. Lyra's small hand rested on his shoulder, and the alien commander looked directly at him, acknowledging his bravery. In that moment, Ethan realized that despite the vast differences between humans and aliens, courage and kindness spoke a universal language. Some humans lowered their weapons slightly, though fear still lingered. Ethan's father had moved closer, his face pale and wide-eyed. What is going on?" he whispered, unsure whether to panic or to trust. Ethan shook his head, trying to find the right words. "Dad, she's not here to hurt us. I saved her. That's why they're here. They're her people." His words barely seemed enough, but the truth was starting to sink in. Slowly, the humans began to realize that the situation was not as simple as it had appeared. Lyra stepped forward, raising her hand slightly, and the glowing symbol she traced in the air projected faint lights toward the humans. It was a language of peace, reassurance, and trust. Ethan watched as some of the humans lowered their weapons completely, the fear in their eyes replaced by confusion, awe, and curiosity. Others still hesitated, unsure whether to believe that these beings so different and powerful were not a threat. Ethan felt a flicker of hope. If he could just hold the line a little longer, perhaps they could avoid bloodshed. The commander then signaled his soldiers to form a protective circle around Lyra and Ethan. The formation was perfect, precise, and unthreatening. The soldiers' glowing eyes scanned the humans without hostility. The children of the village, who had been hiding behind trees and walls, peeked out, curious and amazed. Ethan realized that this was not just a rescue. It was a delicate negotiation between fear and understanding, between species that had never met before. Then, the commander projected images, memories of what had happened to Lyra's homeworld. Ethan watched as humans saw the destruction. The cities burned, the people lost. They could not hear the words, but the images were enough. The destruction had been total, leaving no hope for survival except for Lyra. Ethan felt a deep sadness for the child beside him. He could feel how much she had suffered, even if she had never spoken it aloud. And now, in the middle of the forest, surrounded by humans and aliens alike, she was safe. One human soldier took a tentative step forward, lowering his weapon completely. She's just a child," he said quietly, almost to himself. Others nodded, slowly realizing the truth. The fear that had gripped the village began to fade, replaced by wonder and cautious understanding. Ethan felt relief wash over him, mixed with pride. The boy who had simply offered a chocolate bar had created this moment, a moment of peace in the midst of potential disaster. Lyra then turned to Ethan, her small face glowing with soft blue light. She traced a symbol in the air, one he had never seen before. It was intricate, beautiful, and comforting. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, a silent message of gratitude and trust. He understood without words that the bond they had formed had not only saved her life, but had also created an opportunity for humans and aliens to witness something extraordinary: the power of kindness, bravery, and connection. The alien commander then spoke again, projecting words into both languages, and Ethan realized the full truth. His act of kindness had not only saved Lyra, but had also created a bridge between worlds. The soldiers were here to ensure her safety, but they were also offering humans a chance to see that not all beings from other worlds were enemies. Some could be allies, protectors, and friends. Ethan felt the weight of what had happened. One boy's choice, a simple gift, had carried consequences far beyond anything he could have imagined. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest, the humans and aliens stood in cautious silence. The village had stopped screaming, weapons had been lowered, and a fragile peace hung in the air. Ethan's father came closer, placing a hand on his shoulder, and for the first time Ethan saw understanding in his eyes. He didn't need to explain. The actions, the courage, the simple act of reaching out to Lyra had spoken louder than words. Lyra stayed close to Ethan, her small hand in his, and the commander looked at them both with respect and acknowledgement. The boy had risked so much, stood firm in the face of fear, and chosen compassion over self-preservation. That choice had changed everything. Ethan realized that this moment, tense, frightening, and yet full of possibility, would stay with him forever. He had learned that even the smallest gesture could have consequences beyond imagination, and that bravery often came in the form of simple acts of kindness. The humans were starting to move back slowly, some whispering to each other, some just staring in awe. The soldiers maintained their positions, guarding but not threatening. The forest, which had felt tense and alive with danger, seemed to calm, as if acknowledging the peace that had been created. Ethan looked at Lyra and smiled, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. He knew that this was just the beginning, that many challenges might come, but he also knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by beings from different worlds, Ethan understood something profound. That connection, empathy, and courage could bridge even the greatest divides, and that one simple choice could ripple across worlds, changing everything in its path. The forest was quiet now, almost eerily calm. The initial chaos of the alien arrival had settled, but the tension between humans and aliens still lingered in the air like a heavy fog. Ethan stood in the clearing, Lyra's small hand in his, as hundreds of alien warriors remained stationed around them, their glowing armor shimmering softly in the fading light. The villagers were watching from the edges of the trees, whispering among themselves, still unsure what to make of the extraordinary events they had just witnessed. Ethan felt a mixture of pride and fear. Pride because he had protected Lyra and had played a part in her reunion with her people. Fear because he knew that any wrong move could reignite panic, that humans might misunderstand the aliens' presence, or that something could go terribly wrong. But Lyra's calm gaze and gentle squeeze of his hand reminded him why he had stayed by her side from the very beginning. She trusted him completely, and that trust gave him courage. The alien commander stepped forward, the glow of his eyes reflecting the setting sun. He gestured toward the humans, then toward Lyra, and finally at Ethan. Even though Ethan did not understand all the words being projected through the translator device, the meaning was clear. He had done something remarkable. His act of kindness had saved Lyra, but it had also created a chance for peace between humans and aliens. The commander's eyes softened, a sign of respect and acknowledgement for the boy who had made this possible. Some villagers were still nervous, keeping their distance, but slowly, curiosity began to replace fear. Children peeked out from behind trees while adults whispered to one another, trying to understand what they were seeing. The alien soldiers remained in formation, ready to defend, yet their stance was calm, deliberate, and reassuring. Ethan realized that this was an opportunity for both sides to witness that trust and understanding were possible, even across worlds. Ethan stepped forward, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He raised his voice, trembling slightly but firm enough to be heard by both humans and aliens. "Please, stop fighting. She's a child. She's not here to hurt anyone, and neither am I. You don't have to fight each other." His words were simple, but they carried a power that no weapon could match. The sincerity in his voice, the courage it took to speak amidst so many eyes, made an impact. The alien commander nodded slowly, acknowledging Ethan's words. Lyra traced a glowing pattern in the air, a gesture that seemed to communicate reassurance and peace. Ethan watched as some of the humans lowered their weapons completely, their faces softening as they tried to understand what had just happened. The tension in the clearing, once almost unbearable, began to lift. Even those who were hesitant could see that the aliens were not here to attack. They were here to protect. Ethan's father moved closer, still pale but less fearful now. I don't understand any of this," he whispered, but there was a hint of awe in his voice. Ethan shook his head. "It's okay. You don't have to understand everything, just trust me." Lyra squeezed his hand, her small gesture giving him confidence. The bond they shared, built over weeks of secret meetings, had created something stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. It was a connection that neither humans nor aliens could ignore. The alien commander projected images into the air, showing humans the history of Lyra's homeworld, the destruction and the loss of her people. Ethan could see the impact on the villagers' faces: shock, sorrow, and finally understanding. The destruction had been total, leaving only Lyra alive. The humans realized that the alien warriors had come not for conquest, but for rescue and protection. Ethan felt a deep sense of relief. The boy who had simply given a gift had become a bridge between two worlds, offering a chance for understanding and compassion to replace fear and violence. Lyra then stepped forward, her small glowing hands creating patterns in the air that communicated gratitude and trust. Ethan understood without words that she was thanking him, not just for the chocolate, but for every moment he had spent protecting her, caring for her, and believing in her. The aliens around her seemed to sense the same thing, their stance softening, their movements less rigid. Even the humans watching in awe could feel the sincerity and purity of the bond between the boy and the child. Ethan realized that the moment was delicate. One wrong action, one frightened shout, and the fragile peace could shatter. He stayed calm, holding Lyra close, projecting the courage and kindness he felt inside. Slowly, the villagers began to step forward, offering gestures of peace. Hands raised, heads bowed, and small movements showing that they meant no harm. The alien commander responded in kind, lowering his arms and signaling his soldiers to relax their defensive formation. The forest, which had once felt tense and alive with fear, seemed to breathe again. The wind rustled through the trees gently. Birds cautiously returned to the branches, and the clearing became a place of quiet wonder. Ethan looked at Lyra, and she smiled at him softly, the glow of her skin reflecting the fading sunlight. He felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of relief, pride, and awe at what had just happened. The boy who had acted with simple kindness had rewritten the rules of the moment. Creating hope where there had been only fear, the alien commander stepped closer to Ethan, projecting words through the translator device. Though Ethan could not understand everything, the meaning was clear. His bravery and compassion had earned respect and gratitude. The aliens were offering a gesture of friendship and cooperation. They were not here to conquer but to protect, and they wanted the humans to understand that this was possible. Ethan felt the weight of what he had done, the enormity of the situation, and the hope it created. As the sun set completely, casting long shadows across the clearing, the humans and aliens shared a silent understanding. No words were needed. The boy had shown that courage, kindness, and empathy could bridge even the widest gap between worlds. Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him, knowing that Lyra was safe and that the villagers had begun to understand. The alien soldiers remained vigilant, but there was no hostility, only respect and patience. Then, one of the smaller ships hovering nearby opened its hatch and lowered a small glowing box toward Ethan. Lyra gestured for him to take it. When he opened it, he found a crystal inside, shimmering with soft light, and a small note projected from it. Though he could not read the alien language, he understood its meaning intuitively. A gesture of gratitude, a recognition of his courage, and a reminder of the bond they had formed. Ethan held the crystal close, feeling its warmth, and smiled at Lyra, knowing that this moment would stay with him forever. As the night grew darker, the alien soldiers began to prepare for departure. They would return to their ships, but they would leave the forest and the village in peace, ensuring that Lyra remained safe and that humans and aliens had a chance to coexist without fear. Ethan watched as the ships lifted into the sky, one by one, glowing faintly against the darkness. Lyra's small hand slipped from his and she waved to him, her eyes glowing softly. He waved back, knowing that their bond, though physical distance now separated them, would remain unbroken. Ethan felt a mixture of sadness and pride. Sadness because Lyra was leaving, because the strange magical weeks they had shared were coming to an end. Pride because his simple gift, a chocolate bar, a hand held in trust and a heart willing to care, had not only saved a life but had created hope, understanding, and a bridge between worlds. He realized that even the smallest acts of kindness could have consequences far beyond imagination, and that courage often came in the form of simple gestures. As he walked back toward the village, holding the crystal close, Ethan noticed the villagers watching quietly, some in awe, some in newfound respect. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that defied explanation yet left a mark on every heart present. Ethan understood that the world had changed. Not through war, not through power, but through compassion and bravery. One boy's decision to help a lost child had created ripples that reached across galaxies, and he felt the weight and beauty of that truth. The night sky was filled with stars, each one reminding Ethan of the vastness of the universe and the endless possibilities that kindness could create. He held the crystal, thinking of Lyra, her glowing hands, and the bond they shared. Though their worlds were different, though they were now separated by distance, Ethan knew that their friendship had altered the course of events forever. He had learned that even the smallest actions could matter, that courage and empathy could create miracles, and that one boy's simple gift could change everything.